Hey guys, it's Nichole Eaton with the Rock Your Soul book and podcast, where we talk about how to hack your mindset, grow your intuition, and live your best life. Welcome back to another episode. I wanted to talk today about how to live life on purpose. And what that really means is being really intentional about how you're spending your time, how you're feeling, how you're experiencing your life. You only get one of them. I've been watching this series on Amazon Prime, I think, and it's called Upload, and it talks a lot about afterlife and just so anything heavy focused on afterlife or I'm like one of those people who can't just separate themselves from a show. I have to be totally emotionally involved to really care about it. So I'm watching the show and I'm just thinking about, okay, how am I living my best life? And in this show, this guy passes away at 27. And one of the things that I'm very, very aware of is how fragile life is and that mortality mindset of you got to get it all in before you don't know how much longer you have. And I think in some ways that's a really positive thing. In some ways it can be harmful, but I've been thinking a lot this morning specifically about, am I being intentional about my life? Am I being somebody that I can look back on and be like, yes, I'm a person who is living intentionally and living on purpose. And so maybe you're asking yourself that question, especially during this weird time period of, am I just getting by? Am I doing everything on autopilot? Am I being the person or the mom or the partner or the friend that I really desire to be? And I think that's the biggest piece and the biggest, most powerful shift that you can have is not doing a ton of stuff, but recognizing. And so it's not really about creating a whole list of things that you need to do. It's about bringing your energy back into the present moment where you can be intentional, where you can control it, where you can look around and say, okay, I'm here, I'm present, I'm in my body. Because I find myself kind of in this space where I can switch really quickly in and out of being present in my life. So sometimes I can go like 2 days and then I'll, snap back and be like, where the hell have I been? And so it's almost like we're so programmed to get into this autopilot mode where we're just doing and we're going through the motions of life and we're not really connecting any energy with it. So we're not excited and passionate and happy and feeling all the feels. We're just doing and mindlessly doing. And some things that's fine. You don't need to be thinking heavily while you're driving everywhere. You don't need to be thinking heavily while you're coloring. Like there are definitely moments where that is good and healthy, but sometimes it's used to check out, to avoid facing your own truth, to avoid doing anything that makes it change. So let's talk about how do you get back into your life? If you've been on autopilot for a while, if you're not even sure where to start, how do you get back to being intentional about who you want to be? And I think the first step is recognizing how you're feeling and even just keeping a little bit of a log on, okay, well, Monday went really well. I was in a really good mood. I was very productive. A lot of times we can actually track our natural energy impulses and flows through just keeping a little list of, in your phone, in your calendars, 1 through 5. I had a ton of energy today. I was in a really good mood. 1 being, I was so tired. I just didn't even feel like myself. I know yesterday I felt so off. It was posting Go Day Mayo. So I'm also giving myself that, but I just didn't even feel like I was in my body yesterday. And it took me some time to just disconnect in the afternoon before I really started to feel like, okay, no, I'm back. I'm good. So what kind of day are you having? Recognizing how you're feeling daily, not just mood-wise, which is important, but how you're feeling energetically, because there are natural ebbs and flows to our energy. Sometimes we will have a big burst of energy, and sometimes that's associated with just our rest. Sometimes that's associated with our sleep patterns. Sometimes that's associated with the people we're around or surrounding ourselves with. So just something to pay attention to is, okay, I had a huge burst of energy. Maybe that's, okay, I do really well with a full moon or astrological event, or I do really well when I see my friends and have some external social time, or I do really well when I can get out of the house and get some exercise in. So it's really about paying attention to yourself. And again, we're not always used to that. It can be super easy just to get on autopilot and do your thing without having much of a feeling about it. And sometimes that's easier than maybe facing the truth. But start tracking just how are you feeling day to day. And you can do this through a daily tracker. I've talked about this numerous times in video sessions, even podcasts. I keep a bullet journal. You can go on Pinterest and you can Google bullet journal, or you can Pinterest a bullet journal. It's basically just a daily tracker. And I do 5 or 6 things a day that help me feel more in my body, that help me feel intentional, that help me feel on purpose. And I notice when I don't do those things, when I don't meditate, when I don't work out, when I don't do something for my business, when I don't do some writing, when I, whatever, when I eat like crap, whatever it is, it's super important for me to just keep track of those things, because when I start to deviate from those things that make me feel more on purpose, I lose myself a little bit. So you might go through and say, okay, well, when I connect with friends, even if it's just one friend a day, I feel more on purpose. When I do some writing or some art, or I create, or I make music, or I listen to music, or I work out, those things make me feel more on purpose. So it's exploring those daily things that make you feel more you. And you don't have to do anything to start. You can just track it. Okay, well, I noticed that having dinner with my friends, man, that put me in a really good space. I had so much energy the next day. I'm definitely somebody who gets my energy from other people. So we always talk about extrovert, introvert. What that really means is I refill from other people or external energy, or I refill when I'm by myself through internal energy. That's all extrovert and introvert means, is where do I get access to the most of my energy? So you can kind of also play around with, who do I get my energy from? Maybe I'm extroverted, but maybe some people actually just drain me. So I always love to play the before and after game. How did I feel before I did this? How did I feel after? You can do this with people. You can do this with places you're visiting. You can do this with what you feel drawn to. You can do this with music. How do I feel before and after this is part of my world? So you also get to decide how you feel, right? And it's really important for you to start to check into your own values and beliefs, because we can actually start to get really off by living in other people's values and beliefs. What is important to them? What are their views on the world? What are the things that they're advocating for? And we can lose sense of ourselves. And when we start to align with other people's values or beliefs or norms or whatever, we start to feel very off. That is not to say they're wrong. That is not to say their beliefs and their values are wrong, but they're not ours. And so for you to feel most energized, for you to feel most intentional, it's really important that you're at least clear on what is important to you. You're at least clear on how you feel loved, how you feel happy, what things bring you joy, what things refill you. And you're intentional about knowing those things. And it's kind of one of those things you have to keep checking in on, because as you grow as a person, different things become important to you. For me, something that has become excessively important is disconnecting from technology. I am so much more balanced, grounded. I spend more time on things that are important to me. I create more. I do more when I'm not, when I'm just disconnected from the world. So my initial response was panic and counterintuitive of, well, that's not how you run an online business during this pandemic, during this day and age. You need to be present. You need to be one of those people who's constantly posting, constantly present. But what I found is that when I'm living in alignment, when I'm like good within myself, my clients come out of the woodwork. I have people calling me, referring me, recommending me, listening to my podcast for the first time and reaching out. And so I've actually, sometimes the more distant I become, the more filled up my schedule is, because I am in alignment. And when you're in alignment, you naturally attract the things that are meant for you. You naturally attract all of the things that make you feel good. And so sometimes the really only to-do thing is to take each moment and say, okay, what makes me happy? What people make me happy? What kind of stuff can I surround myself that fuels me. I'm huge on Marie Kondo. She is, you can watch her on Netflix. She also has a book called The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. She organizes her, it's not just to get rid of stuff and organize and declutter your house. It's more about surrounding yourself with things that feel inspiring to you, creating an environment, because your internal environment is always responding to your external environment. So, but looking at things and asking, do I love this? Does it bring me joy? 80% of the time, does this bring me joy? And that's such a good rule of thumb, not just for things, but for people, for places. If 80% of the time this thing brings you joy, you should probably keep it around. You should probably hold on to that pretty tight. Put it off to, put it on a shelf, put it in your life more often. If there's 80% of the time that this person brings you joy, or this situation brings you joy, and really ask yourself that, because sometimes we cling on to things that sometimes bring us joy and half the other time they just bring us down. And that's a little bit of a challenging thing to admit, but just explore yourself. Does it make me feel really good? Does it make me feel like myself? What kind of things can I surround myself that make me feel good? Let's hear a quick word from our sponsor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. So living on purpose is about finding the joy in each day, finding intentionality in each day, finding purpose in each day. Part of that, I believe, takes intentional scheduling. So time for meditation, time for working out, time for exploring. And maybe you're saying to me, well, I don't have enough time already, but I would call bullshit on that, because there's so much time wasted on social media. I know one of the things that scared me into disconnecting from my phone was when quarantine first started, I was in this place where I was spending a lot of time on my phone. And then I realized I really wasn't even being productive. I don't even know what I was doing on there, but your screen time report, if you have an Apple phone, is really awful. It's like, you just spent a full-time job on your devices, and for what? What do you have to show for it at the end of the day? So if you're like, I don't know if I have time, take off all social media, take off half your texting, to put your phone on do not disturb for half the day, and then see if you might have more time. See if you might have more time to be more present with your kids. See if you might have more time if you're not watching that Netflix series, if you're not diving into a movie, or if you're not reading through the comments on all the news live reports. Just see if you have more time, because I bet you do. And to grow in who you are and to create more happiness and intentionality in your life, you have to be very protective of your time. It's so vital that you protect the one resource that you have that's limited. And when you start to the other thing that I like to do is I like to set the intention that I have all the time in the world to get the things done that make me feel good. And it's a silly little notion, but when we start to tell ourselves, I don't have time for this, I don't have time, there's no way I have time, guess what? We don't have. Our brain will look for the things we tell it to look for. It will look for lack of time. You'll be wasting time in areas that you didn't even realize you're wasting time in, and you will blame it on the fact that time is just hard to come by. So resetting your relationship with time into a space where I have all the time I need and all the resources I need to do the things that make me feel good. I believe that the universe wants us to be happy. And there are times where I had the hard time believing that, and I'm not going to lie, but I think the universe does want us to be happy. And I think that if we start to reshape our relationship with time and resources and money and how we feel about it and how it feels about us, that it changes how our day-to-day experience is. So intentionally schedule fun, set intentions around your relationship to the things that feel hard, because that's really important too. This is, again, resetting your beliefs and your values by getting clear about what they even are. Resetting your beliefs about what's possible for you and what you can and can't have is also an important piece. Getting clear and honest about what feels good. Sometimes we don't want to admit what feels good. It sucks. It means we have to change something if we admit that, man, it feels like really freeing to do this. It feels really freeing to go to work instead of being, maybe a stay-at-home mom. It feels really good to have something that's on purpose, even if it's not making me as much money. It feels really good, whatever that is. It's giving yourself permission to acknowledge that it feels good. And you'll hear me talk about this pretty much every podcast because I think this is the key. If you can get honest with yourself about where you're at in your life and what's working and what's not working, and I think that sometimes just acknowledging is part of an action step. You don't have to do anything wild. You can just make a mental choice and things will start to shape. Because again, when we tell our brain what to do, when we tell our brain what we want, when we tell our brain the truth, we align with ourselves, which automatically universally gives us better options, but also we get into a space where we start taking subconscious actions to improve on the areas that we're struggling with, whether that's your career or your relationship or your finances or whatever the case might be. It's about understanding what you're telling yourself and how it's manifesting in your real world. When we say, I don't have time for that, or I don't have any time, again, we're looking for reasons to not have time. Our brain has to do what we tell it to do. It's a command center. It's a machine. We're programming it with every thought. And so when we start to be intentional about, I have more than enough time, I'll figure it out. I hate saying, I don't know. I don't know is the most unfunctional statement that you could possibly include in your life. Because when you start to say, I don't know, you get into a space where you're starting to not only tell your brain that it doesn't know. So what does your brain have to look for if you say, I don't know? It doesn't know what to look for. It looks for all the pieces that make sense for you to not know about. So sometimes it's just the solution is coming to me. I feel more clear every day. I'm getting really clear about the action steps to take in my career. I'm getting really clear about what's next for me. I'm getting really clear about my path. You don't have to know the steps to feel clear. You don't have to know but when you're saying, I don't know, you're just telling yourself to look for things that you don't know about. You're also manifesting. If you believe in the spiritual component, you're manifesting things to not know about. So getting clear within yourself, telling yourself the truth is really an important piece to living on purpose. These are the things that make me happy. These are the things I want to absorb my day with. These are the people I want in my life. These are the locations I feel best in. That was something that was really important. I used to live in upstate New York, and I had really bad seasonal depression. And I've noticed that since moving here, just like there's so much sunshine in South Carolina. I live in South Carolina now, and there's so much sunshine here, and it makes all the difference in the world. And even now, when I go back to visit, I love seeing the people that I love and care about there. But when I come back, I just feel like, like this, and the thing is anytime I had come to visit prior to moving, I always felt that I always felt better. Our soul knows where we belong. It knows the places it's supposed to be. It knows the people that we feel best with. Like it knows what feels home, what resonates and feels at home with us. So sometimes all we have to do is just pay attention because it's telling us, our intuition does not skip a beat telling us what's important. It's just our ability to listen to it. And it's our ability to not be too scared to act on it and to not be too scared to do something about it. So part of our job is really listening, shutting up sometimes just to listen, giving ourselves permission to say something other than I don't know, because the reality is again, I know you know, you don't want to admit it, but you know. One of the last things is making time to go inward. We don't always study ourselves. And again, we grow so much, and sometimes we did a lot of self-work, and then we've grown so much that the same self-work and the things that we knew about ourselves at one point are no longer true, or they no longer make sense for us, or they're no longer where we're at in our life. And so sometimes you have to, I would say at least once a year, take time to really study yourself, take time to really ask yourself those internal questions of like, what do I want? What do I see myself? What kind of things make me feel good? What kind of people do I want to support myself? What am I needing? I know that when I first moved to South Carolina, I was craving community. That was one thing that I had really profoundly in New York, is a sense of community. And so when I moved here, it was just this big gaping hole in my life of like, I wasn't part of anything. I wasn't volunteering in any way. I didn't know anybody. And it's a weird feeling when like your soul's craving something to just very blatantly not have it. And now that's something that I can easily say, I live in one of the most beautiful communities, not just beautiful aesthetically, but beautiful in that I have so many wonderful neighbors and so many wonderful people, and we're constantly getting together, and there's just such a sense of community. And I'm part of a church that does so much good volunteer work throughout the world, honestly, but just it feels so on purpose and intentional. So maybe what you needed then isn't what you need now. And you're going to have to like reframe some things to figure that out of what is it. Maybe you just need to live, authentically. Maybe you've been trying to be somebody or something to other people to impress them or to make them feel good. And maybe you just need to be yourself. Maybe you need to go back to your roots of like, what are the things that I used to love? Sometimes it's not always moving forward. Sometimes it's moving backward so you can move forward in a better version of you. So if you find yourself that you're always tired or you're always depressed or you're always feeling like life is off or you're always feeling frustrated or there's just no magic in your world, maybe it's time for you to just look in the mirror and ask yourself, like, have I given up everything that I used to be? Have I let go of all of the creative aspects of me, of all the ways that I allowed myself to be fun and silly? And if I become something that I feel like other people want me to be or are looking for, I know that that's only going to speak to some of you, but I just feel like that's an important message. If you feel like you've come so far outside of who you used to be, maybe it's just going back to the basics. I was reading a post by a good friend of mine this morning, and she was talking about fundamentals. And fundamentals are important. She specializes in like athletics, but fundamentals are important in building block foundations for the future and for your progression. And you need those first. So sometimes it's really not about building on where you're at. Sometimes it's about going back. What did I love when I was little? What kind of things? Because our soul is so pure when we're little. It doesn't have these notions of what's right and what's wrong and what's acceptable by society and what's going to get me ahead. It doesn't have any of those. So when you can go back to who was my pure organic little baby soul, and what did that feel like and what did that look like? And I loved, when I was little, I loved to write. And for a long time, I didn't include any writing in my life. And now that's important to me. Even if I just write for myself, even if I just jot my thoughts down at the end of the day or just brain dump or just write some thoughts down, like that's something that is my soul that I feel better because I do. So sometimes getting in touch with those real aspects of ourselves come with kind of going backwards before we move forward. So creating time to go inward, studying yourself. Meditation is another huge one. I'm not going to preach to you the benefits of meditation, but there's numerous benefits of meditation. It will rock your world. And some people are like, oh, I can't meditate. So for people, if you're one of those people who's like, I can't meditate, Nichole, I can't even shut my brain off for 5 seconds, you might be somebody who's an active meditator. And what I mean by that is some people meditate while they clean. Some people meditate while they ride bikes or run or just anywhere where you feel a little blank and you feel like you're not actively thinking and you're just doing. That some people meditate even while they drive. It's basically the ability to drop your frequency down to a state where your brain can restore itself. So a lot of runners meditate. A lot of people who ride bikes meditate. So you might be in active painting, drawing, coloring. Coloring is a good meditation. So it's, again, just the ability for your brain to drop frequency so it can restore itself. That's all meditation really is. In any moment that you're present, you're actually kind of in a meditative state because you're not thinking too hard outside of where you're at, and it gives yourself a chance to restore. So even just bringing your energy into the present moment. I also huge on guided meditation. Some people who with busy brains do better if they have kind of a visual or a guided imagery. So you can try plenty of different ways to meditate. But Dr. Joe Dispenza studies basically the power of our brain to reset itself and to redesign itself. And so he has a book called Becoming Supernatural, and just so much good stuff in there, but also just in general, you should follow him. You should look him up. You should listen to his studies because they're fascinating. But Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about a lot about how spontaneity changes the brain and giving yourself permission to be spontaneous and to play, and how important it is for resetting who you are, and how important it is for rewiring your neural synapses and connectivity and making it better. So check him out, but also giving yourself permission to play and to have fun and to be silly and to live a life that's a little bit more free of judgment. Make sure you're tracking stuff. Make sure you're looking into what makes me a better person. How do I feel energetically? How do I feel internally when I do these things? How do I want to become better? How do I want to live my life more intentionally? Because when you are living your life more intentionally, it adds up. You feel happier, you feel more energized, you feel more like yourself, you feel like you're making better decisions. And when you become stronger in who you are and in your alignment, it's easier to make those decisions that are true to you. It's easier to stop settling for things that just don't work anymore. It's easier for you to look into what you want and what you can have instead of feeling stuck. So giving yourself permission to live a life on purpose, to get off autopilot, to get back in your life, back in your body, and to be intentional, because that is what is going to make life worth it for you. That's what's going to make life feel better for you. So make sure to catch up with me at www.nicholeeaton.com. It's NicholeEaton. I have plenty of free stuff up there. Plus, you can book a session with me, or you can check out some of my courses. But thanks for catching up, guys. Make sure to share this podcast with your friends. Leave me a review. I would appreciate it. Bye.